But Jim, let's move on from Phil Mushnick and Vince to another Vince story, and we'll save a little bit of the Vince stuff for tomorrow on The Experience when we record it. Bret the Hitman Hart has spoken out now.
Well, that's what I was going to say. If Bret Hart had heard any stories with details approaching what we've heard lately about Vince McMahon, I have a hard time believing that he wouldn't have made reference, right? From years ago.
You would think so. You would certainly hope so. I guess Bret Hart's still a lot of people's hero. But an article here from...
Well, he's saying it now, and the stuff he says now sounds like the that he used to say 25 years ago. He hasn't changed that much.
There's an article here from Slate.com by Abraham Josephine Reisman, or Reisman, I'm not sure the exact pronunciation, excuse me. Quote, "It's too sick and disgusting to really imagine." The new allegations against Vince McMahon have finally pushed Bret the Hitman Hart to denounce him for good. That's the headline. What do you think of that?
Well, that's why I say that Bret didn't hear about shit like this in the 80s or 90s, or we would have heard something like this from Bret before, but go ahead.
Well, I guess it's a long article, and it covers a lot of the stuff we've talked about. Let me, you could again check it out, slate.com. Let me find some of the quotes. "I'm going to speak my truth. I'm not worried about Vince's feelings. He never cared about mine. I don't have any problem with everybody kicking his head around the parking lot. I'm okay with the truth coming out."
That's another one of those sports they have in Canada. In addition to the curling, they take decapitated heads and kick them around a parking lot.
Let me scroll down a little more. According to the filing, McMahon coerced Grant into a three-way sexual encounter during which McMahon allegedly defecated on Grant's head and back while she was being raped by another man, then forced her to continue being assaulted for an hour and a half before letting her shower. It was too much for Hart. Quote, "When you get that vision in your head, you go, that's messed up. It's too sick and disgusting to really imagine." But at the same time, the lewd text messages included in the suit, allegedly sent by McMahon after the incident, have a convincingly familiar ring, Hart said. Quote, "They sound like Vince." End quote. And then a little bit down here,
Now, wait a minute, hold on. I don't know in what context. I'm sure Vince and Bret have texted each other because, as we know, Vince, in any way that he can contact you, he'll master it. And I guess Bret's one of these people is, we got a text now like the young folks. But I defy Bret Hart to come up with any text that Vince McMahon ever sent him that approaches any of those texts. Maybe just the wordiness or the lack of grammatical consistency maybe was the tone of Vince's text.
I think it was one of them. It almost looked like one of his attempts at, the Vince mind trick, where he said something like awful that he wanted her to do. And then he was like, "Holy shit. Isn't this great?" Like the holy shit got me. I was like, whoa, that's him. Well, let me go back to Bret here.
Or when he almost parenthetically added, "And more on this truthful story I'm telling you."
"I don't think that this is the only incident of this kind of predatory behavior," Hart said. "I think you'll find that it's everywhere in WWE." But he never spoke up. McMahon was too fearsome at the time. Go back to Bret here. "It's kind of like The Godfather. You never know when a guy like Vince will be your enemy again over something you say or do. Plus, it seemed like nothing could stop him anyway." Back to Bret. "He's the Teflon guy. You just can't seem to get anything on him. He's just too powerful. Got too much money." Let's stop there. What do you think of that? That's kind of what you were saying before, why people wouldn't say anything.
Yeah, but I believe he finally got some on him. I think this one's going to stick a little while. Again with Bret, I didn't mean to laugh a minute ago when he's, boy, that's messed up. I mean, what a classic Canadian Bret Hart understatement of an issue. Yeah, think of Brett was one of the top guys. And he was in the class that Vince dealt with on a one-on-one basis, because we were talking last week on one of these programs about what kind of relationship does Vince have with his top guys now. It apparently has changed and modified over the years because, and as Michael said, Jesus Christ, the rumors amongst people, both jealous wrestlers and bewildered fans, as to why Michael's got Vince put up with so much shit from him. Well, there must be something going on between them. Well, no, I'm sorry, that wasn't happening. And as Michael said, he never had problems getting women on his own. Of all the problems he caused himself and had self-inflicted wounds, those were not among them. And knowing Shawn Michaels of that era, even though Vince was the boss, he always, and we've talked about it, there was some element of him being the nerd wanting to hang out with the cool kids. Why he put up with that from the Click or DX or whatever. They've drawn him money, yes, but also as the boys club type of thing that appealed to Vince because he was on the outside looking in. If the 45-year-old Vince McMahon had suggested a three-way to 30-year-old Shawn Michaels or whatever it was, Michaels would have, I don't know whether he would have laughed first or fucking his tongue would have dropped out of his mouth. But that would not have been a situation that any of those guys, I don't think, could have performed in back in those days. With the principal in the fucking room? I don't know what's going on with Vince and Laurinaitis, but Vince did not have that relationship with The Undertaker, I'll tell you that.
All right, well, let's go back to Bret. But more important was the love and respect Hart still held for so long. Without McMahon, he had told me, I wouldn't be the same man I am today. McMahon made many of the best things in his adult life possible. It was an exploitative power McMahon held over everyone he built up in the world he built. Now, Hart sees McMahon facing the greatest threat that a man who has built a profitable reputation for sadism could face.
What? Wait, what?
He is facing the greatest threat that a man who has built a profitable reputation for sadism can face.
What?
Here's Bret Hart's quote. It's like Jeffrey Dahmer, Harvey Weinstein, or Jeffrey Epstein. Vince will be a joke. He'll be used for humor, and you'll shake your head at the shock value of some jokes about it. What did Vince McMahon do? He'll always be associated with this story, especially as it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. Yeah, these quotes from Bret are pretty fascinating. He's just right away ready to say, yeah, fuck Vince. That's why I love Bret.
Bret's an upstanding kind of guy. He doesn't go in for any of that falderall going on out there. But I think the wording was a little flowery about the man who's built a profitable industry of sadism or whatever.
Well, it says here, I always had respect for him. Now it's tainted. I'm embarrassed I thought so highly of him. And I think that's the way a lot of people felt. But the other interesting thing here, Hart has already tried to make amends for his past belief in McMahon. Throughout his time in WWF and for the decades later, he heard the rumors and accusations of sexual impropriety against McMahon, and he generally dismissed them. For example, when WWF's first female referee, Rita Chatterton, came forward in 1992 to accuse McMahon of raping her, Hart looked for holes in her story and wrote it off, even going so far as to credit her accusations in interviews. I just didn't believe it, Hart told me. I figured Vince had too much at stake to ever do something like that. Even after the 2022 revelations of alleged hush money payments from McMahon, 2 former employees became public, and he briefly resigned, Hart had kept his mouth shut. Same when McMahon forced his way back into the boardroom in 2023 despite the unresolved accusations. But a few months ago, after hearing the advanced rumblings of these latest accusations, Hart ran into Chatterton at a convention. "I apologize from the bottom of my heart," Hart recalled, "and I said I believe that what happened to you, and I apologize and I was wrong." Hart sounds genuinely remorseful when he tells me these things. He already lost his father, a legendary wrestling promoter in his own right, 20 years ago. Now it's as though he has lost another. And the final quote here: "I think, despite all the issues I ever had with Vince, I know deep down I always respected him. But now, knowing what kind of weirdo he became, I have absolutely zero respect for him." Hart wrote to me in a text message after our conversation. "I do not think I could ever shake his hand if he extended it. Too creepy." And there it is. You can read the whole article at slate.com. Josephine Reisman also wrote the Vince McMahon biography. Was it Ringmaster?
Yes.
So they've been on the case of Vince McMahon for a while, so this is someone with knowledge of what happened back then, I would believe.
I was going to say, when we were talking about our friend Phil Mushnick earlier, and the promo that I cut on him, I think Brett's the same thing. When I promoted Phil Mushnick on that Raw episode, it was because a column he had written after Brian Pillman died. And he was knocking Pillman, but also he always knocked the business itself. I wasn't defending Vince. I didn't say anything about Vince personally. It was about, I had no problem at all cutting a promo on a guy that was knocking the wrestling business. I'd done that throughout my life and would continue to. And I think Bret here is not only aghast, upset, it's unsavory, the details, but also he's upset at how Vince has made the business look and how he has disgraced that and given all these people who never liked it to begin with the excuse and opportunity to slander the whole wrestling business and everybody that's been in it because this one fucking guy does this shit. And I think, because talking about used to having respect for Vince McMahon, I've mentioned this. Whether it was the boys or whether it was TV people or whether it was anybody, when Vince of old came into the room, he's tall, he's got the suits, he's got the presence, the personal magnetism of that this is somebody, he's important. He had that voice, and is like the principal was in the room, or there's some authority figure. You're on your best behavior, mind your P's and Q's, as Mama Cornette used to say. And then to find out that he's a driveling, disgusting, perverted old man that not only that, but he's stupid about it. I said, I can't believe he was this stupid. Bret said, how could he be this stupid? You found this guy that you had respect for, even if he had fucked you around personally or fucked you around business-wise, you could say, look at him, well, he's got his shit together. And now you find he's a blithering idiot that has destroyed his own reputation and cost himself, however many millions and millions and millions of dollars over this behavior. Even if nothing else, that's a departure. That's a shock. That's a transition from the guy that we all knew. Even if he was a crazy billionaire, he was still, you didn't think he's a complete fucking buffoon.
I mean, that's one of your points, and that has been, he never thought he would be this stupid on top of everything else. But again, maybe he reverted back to what he's always been. Let's move on from the Bret Hart, Vince McMahon, or the Vince McMahon update today. We'll have more Vince McMahon on the Drive-Thru that we're returning to, that we're recording tomorrow.
No, this is the Drive-Thru. We're recording the experience.
I don't know where we are.
And he sold his condo, by the way, in 2023. I guess the trips through the lobby were getting awkward.
And it was Linda's condo, too, apparently.
Yes, they owned it as a couple, and they sold it for like what, under 2 million, when they had paid like 4 million and wanted originally 4 million, but he took half of that to get out of there apparently.
Well, more about Vince and his sick weirdo behavior, as Bret Hart put it later on.